Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Insight Tonight. My name is Eugene Kwach, and of course, this is on GBS TV. Tonight, we are honored to have with us a distinguished gentleman, the UN Habitat Deputy Executive Director, who was at UN Habitat, the United Nations program responsible for advocating for sustainable urbanization and promoting the development of cities that are inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. With the world facing unprecedented challenges from the global health crisis of the pandemic to the ongoing climate emergency, UN Habitat has been at the forefront of efforts to ensure that the urban spaces of today are transformed into the sustainable cities of tomorrow. Yet this mission has not been without its challenges as countries and cities continue to navigate the complexities of achieving the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, otherwise known as SDGs. Dr. Mikal has been deeply involved in leading strategies to ensure that progress is made even in the face of adversity. In today's conversation, we will dive deep into the key issues surrounding the implementation of the SDGs, particularly in the context of sub-Saharan African, and a lot more conversation that we're going to have here tonight on the cities. Well, this is The Insight, and of course, my name is Eugene Kwach once again. Thank you so much, Dr. Mikal, for joining us for this great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Good evening, and great to be here again. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes.
And to be here again on The Insight.
Mm-hmm. It is indeed a great privilege. Before we get into the topic of the day, actually, I was just wondering, because you've been in the cities, and actually that is actually what you're working into. And of course, some other time you talked about living in the country. Which one would you love? Between living in the country, or do you love to live in the urban? Maybe
it's a great point. Thanks very much. Let me start by saying that just last Friday we concluded the 12th session of the World Urban Forum that took place in Cairo in Egypt with around 25,000 participants. Which we are very proud of. And the topic of the World Urban Forum in Cairo, first time in a megacity and second time in Africa, was it all starts at home,
yes.
Focusing on local solutions for our sustainable present and future. And well, for myself, I'm a mountain boy. So of course I always feel well back at home in the mountains. There is no place like home, as we all know. But cities are our future.
Yes.
I can maybe start by saying that back in 1950, the balance was about 30% of the people living in our cities, whereas 70% of the population used to live in the rural areas. And by 2050, it will be exactly the opposite. We will see only 30% of the population staying in the rural areas, and as many as 70% of the global population staying in the urban areas in our cities, which of course comes with major challenges, but also major opportunities, and yes. Looking forward to discussing some of those.
Quite much interesting. Now that you've talked about challenges, you've talked about in the years to come, actually, we'll be experiencing 70% of the population of the world maybe living in the urban area, and of course maybe 30 living in the rural. And so it means that the UN Habitat is also doing something to create a more sustainable environment. But of course, as you mentioned earlier, we understand that this implementation of these SDGs actually has had some recent global disruptions. So if you could maybe share some successful work maybe that has been done by the UN Habitat in promoting the SDGs. But of course, you can also mention some of the challenges actually that you guys have been facing.
Indeed, absolutely. As we know, the 2030 Agenda and the 17 SDGs have been a global blueprint for advancing the socio-economic development on the global scale, but also bringing it down to the regional, the national, and more and more importantly also the local level. And this is the issues that we have been focusing on a lot. Of course, we all know that we are lagging behind, that the progress of implementation of the 2030 Agenda is not what we need. One obvious reason is the pandemic that really held us back, and we have seen even regressions in some important areas, including health, education, and eradication of poverty, unfortunately. And of course, all the SDGs are very much interrelated. At UN Habitat, we are the custodians, so to say, of SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities. And last year, we actually published even such a small booklet, pocket progress report on the implementation of SDG 11, which contains some of the main wake-up calls, I would call it, some of the important data and information that shows us how much progress we have made and where exactly we are lagging behind. And of course, we know that it's not easy to accelerate on so many different fronts. Indeed, as I said, starting from health, education, poverty eradication, and then moving down, of course, towards climate action and also sustainable cities and communities. But it's important to have credible data and to really have a good basis for the action that we are designing. Because designing action without appropriate data, information, and knowledge would not be responsible, to say the least. So, from this important data, I would highlight in particular the housing piece. And of course, I know that our viewers also here in Kenya are very much concerned about the housing situation, and we know that we have a challenge of informal settlements, of slums, but also a huge gap in terms of affordable and adequate housing. And we can come back to Kenya if you agree a bit later. But on the global scale, the housing crisis, and we really call it a housing crisis, is such that if we wanted to address it fully, we would need to build 96,000 new housing units a day. To be able to close the gap, which of course we know it's hardly realistic unless some miracles occurred. But it's important for us to understand and to grasp the size of the issue, the magnitude of the problem, and try to adjust our policies and our action accordingly. Or maybe I can just briefly add that we see that we will have 3 billion people, or roughly 40% of the world's population, in need of better housing, which of course is a huge percentage of the global population, or that we have seen an increase in the number of slum dwellers, currently at about 165 million more slum dwellers that have emerged globally over 20 years, reaching nearly 1.1 billion in 2020. 1.1 billion slum dwellers is really a serious challenge. And of course, it's not only about housing. Then the inappropriate housing context, of course, leads to a lot of additional challenges, again on health, education, water, sanitation, and many others. And let me conclude that by also adding that we see that today we have around 318 million people globally that are experiencing some form of homelessness, which is also an important piece and of course important consideration. And these are not challenges that are only occurring, let's say, in the global south. Often these are challenges and problems that also are extremely relevant for the global north. So obviously we have a lot to do together, globally, join forces. Of course, there is no one size fits all. We need to share experience, learn from each other, and accelerate. That's probably the imperative. Acceleration for the whole SDG work that we are doing. And let me conclude this piece by also adding that we are, as UN Habitat, as the United Nations Human Settlements Program, covering human settlements in the urban but also in the rural areas, we are also coordinating the United Nations work on localizing the SDGs, which really means bringing down all the focus and the implementation to the local level, and including in the important solutions that we are designing the local actors. Of course, in Kenya's case, for example, starting with the county governments, with the governors and the county administrations, but then also other local actors, including civil society, academia, and others, to really team up and move the needle forward in a very robust way, whereby, of course, the national governments then have a role more when it comes to policies, when it comes to preparing the necessary legislation, and of course helping with the financing. But you cannot do the implementation, as we have really realized, without the local actors. So now the SDG localization has been globally recognized also by the entire UN system, under the leadership of our Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, as an accelerator, as a driver of action and a driver of faster implementation of all the 17 SDGs.
Thank you. Well, just a follow-up question on actually the same that you've actually mentioned, and that is maybe on monitoring and accountability, because you've mentioned and talked about some of the challenges actually that you guys have faced, but perhaps someone would wish to ask on maybe the institutional frameworks that have actually been established to monitor maybe the progress of SDGs, if any, maybe one or two.
Absolutely, and it brings us back to data, to credible data, and of course to reporting, and then monitoring those important developments. And at UN Habitat, we have been really paying a lot of attention to the data-related work, and also to creating alliances where we are teaming up with other important actors to not only to have sufficient data available on the various aspects of our work, but then also to be able to disaggregate the data appropriately, and to draw on the basis of the data some important lessons, recommendations that we are obviously providing to the national governments or to other levels of government or other players in this important context. And this is what we do best, policy. advising on viable, sustainable, inclusive policies that need to be designed on the various levels of government in order to ensure that indeed we stay the course. And we have, for example, helped specifically in many African countries organize what we call national urban fora, where we bring together with the governments all the various stakeholders that are relevant in a given country for an important conversation on urban planning, on urban policies, on sustainable urban future, and what exactly it entails. Of course, there is no one size fits all. Many of the issues would be slightly different in Kenya compared to Ethiopia or South Africa or Senegal, Ghana, or other countries where we work. But it's been a particularly relevant and much appreciated platform that we have been able to develop. And very importantly also, for the first time ever, this September, we teamed up with the African Union Commission and Ethiopia as a host, and we organized for the first time in Addis Ababa the African Continental Urban Forum, which was super transformational, I would say, super relevant and focused, well attended by ministers of urbanization or housing from all 54 member states of the African Union. So as you can see, we are really trying to shape up and influence those practical policies and equip the decision makers, the policy makers, with the necessary tools, knowledge, and also data for them to be able to take good, forward-looking decisions for the future of their countries. And when I'm talking about the future, obviously, at the center of the policy recommendations and the practical solutions that we are working on is the youth as the driver of those important changes, and of course as our future, and also as a strong component of the population, because as we know, we have at least 60% of the population, let's say in Africa, under the age of 25.
We'll get to talk about that specifically on how maybe the UN Habitat specifically is now working with the youth. But before that, we were talking about the institutional frameworks that have actually been put in place by the UN Habitat. But again, the question is how these frameworks that have actually been put, how effective are they to ensure accountability at the national and regional levels?
Indeed, that's an important aspect because we always need to have the mirror that we look into, and we need to be able to measure and to then adjust or accelerate the work that we are doing. Of course, there is a number of monitoring frameworks. I would like to mention especially our global urban monitoring framework, which was created already in 2022 as part of the harmonized global UN system-wide strategy for monitoring. Then, of course, we also have the SDG project assessment tool, the SDG localization framework that I have already mentioned, and very importantly, one of our flagship programs, SDG Cities, that also helps us better leverage and target, focus our interventions. But of course, tools alone are not enough. There is a need to ensure effectiveness and accountability. And we do it by setting standards, ensuring data integration, and building capacities of the city authorities that then use them on standardization, for data-driven decision making, and on capacity building. So these are some of our focused and targeted ways of ensuring that there is monitoring and accountability on the global level, that we are kind of safeguarding, but then that work is in a necessary, in an appropriate way translated as support to the authorities on the national and local level, and of course, as I said, even going down to the mayors, or in Kenya's case, governors like our good friend, governor of the Nairobi City County, Sakaja, with the SDG Cities flagship program that we have, that has been really one of our sources of pride, where we have been targeting 1 billion people by engaging in the first phase 100 cities through the work that we continue doing, and of course publications. We are particularly proud of being a center of excellence on the global scale in the area of urbanization, sustainable cities and communities, sustainable human settlements, but also urban climate, urban financing, urban crises, because unfortunately that's also an inseparable part of the portfolio.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. That is quite much interesting how you've actually elucidated quite a much about how you guys get to do this. But of course, this conversation continues. In today's conversation, actually, we get to delve deeply into the key issues surrounding the implementation of the SDGs, particularly in the context of sub-Saharan Africa. Of course, a region that faces both unique opportunities and significant challenges. So we're taking a very quick short break, but of course we'll be right back. To the Bwanda before is our SMS line at Quach Official, and of course at UN Habitat, on Twitter. Thank you so much. We take a quick short break, but we'll be right back.
Welcome to the 254 Trivia Game Show, where every second counts and the stakes are sky high.
Get ready for jaw-dropping challenges, mind-bending questions, and unbeatable fun.
Who will rise to the top and claim the ultimate prize?
Tune into GBS TV and let the games begin.
Don't miss out. This is the 254 Trivia Game Show. Good luck.
Today we are going to have the Scouts Corner.
Drop. Tease. Let. Tease. Let.
And I'm joined with two wonderful schools. Firstly, we have the Kings and Queens Academy. And we have the SEK St. Elizabeth Academy. Hi. We'll be having different segments. And the first segment, we'll have the Bible knowledge.
Now, Maureen's father works in a place where believers were first called Christians. The place is called?
The third segment will have the spelling bee.
We have 30 seconds to give your answer. Are you ready?
Yes.
Amazing.
NINTY 90. CHOCOLATE chocolate.
Meet us every day on Saturday, same place, same time.
in Earthcom Arts. I'm a painting artist, a self-taught painting artist.
It's a very big business in Nairobi.
Sure.
So nini unaekanga different, unaekanga art yako hapo kwa hiyo bed ama unaekanga aje?
What I need for me
Yeah.
to do painting on canvas, to be precise. He introduced me to doing painting on canvas.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I should what I need for me to do painting on canvas.
Umetuambia your mentor for paintings ni Jose Arts.
Yeah.
Mentor wako wa furniture na wood ni nani?
First of all, I'm a fan of nature. And everything that I paint to do with nature must be something I've experienced.
Oh, okay.
So most of the time when I'm doing any painting to do with nature, huwa na try kuonyesha or maybe to express my experiences.
Utatuonesha pia hiyo clock venye it's really really amazing, the clock. Naona unapenda hii woodwork more. Hebu tu explain here.
Yes.
Utaambia watu your social media handles kwanza wako stock pale kidogo.
Kweli.
So through the four gospel books, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John, we can know the heart of Jesus in depth.
그리고 우리가 느끼는 그 예수님을 성경을 통해 느낄 수 있어서 너무 감사합니다.
And the Jesus that we can feel him through the scriptures, and I'm very thankful about that. Jesus Christ came to this earth for our
죄를
sins.
지셨고
He carried our sins,
십자가에 못 박혀 주고 죄의 형벌을 당하셨고
and he was crucified, and he received the punishment for sins,
무덤에 들어가셨다가
and he was put into the tomb
사흘 만에 부활하셨습니다.
and resurrected in 3 days.
이것이 우리가 말하는 복음입니다.
This is the gospel that we speak.
예수님께 우리 죄를 위해 죽으신 이야기.
About how Jesus died for our sins. The purpose of Jesus being
우리
crucified.
죄를 담당하기 위하여 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으셨습니다.
He was crucified to pay for our
그리고
sins.
예수 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으심으로 우리 죄가 분명히 씻어졌는데
And through Jesus being crucified, clearly our sins have been washed clean.
참 안타깝게도 많은 사람은 여전히 죄인이라고 말합니다.
However, unfortunately, many people still say that they are sinners.
Today we are going to have the Scouts Corner.
Drop. Tease. Let. Tease. Let.
And I'm joined with two wonderful schools. Firstly, we have the Kings and Queens Academy. And we have the SEK St. Elizabeth Academy. Hi. We'll be having different segments. And the first segment, we'll have the Bible knowledge.
Now, Maureen's father works in a place where believers were first called Christians. The place is called?
The third segment will have the spelling bee.
We have 30 seconds to give your answer. Are you ready? Yes. Amazing.
NINTY 90. CHOCOLATE. Chocolate.
Meet us every day on Saturday, same place, same time.
Everywhere, GBS.
Welcome back on this conversation here on The Insight, of course, with Dr. Mikhail Milenar from the UN Habitat. Of course, this is a great conversation, actually, that we are getting to understand the SDG 11 that they are promoting. And, of course, generally, a lot of things under what UN Habitat is doing. And, of course, they have plans. They have short-term plans. Of course, they have long-term plans. And we are going to delve really deeply into this to get to understand more about it, of course. And you talked about the very many plans that actually the UN Habitat has. But of course, I understand that when you talk about the Vision 2030, where we had now the SDGs, we had the 17 SDGs, there was a time limit. it was not just definite. And so I know that you guys have those short-term goals that you have, and of course maybe the long-term goals that you have. Maybe just in your view, what should actually the UN Habitat prioritize, both in the short term and the long term, just to enhance the effectiveness in achieving the SDGs?
Indeed, it's important to match the policies with the practical work, and UN Habitat is very unique or very special in that context, because we have the so-called normative branch, which is based here at our headquarters in Nairobi, and then we have the operational branch, which actually means that we work in the field in 93 countries. Where we have our presence in one way or another, where we implement specific projects focused on the different urban, city-related and sustainability-driven projects. And you hit the nail on its head also in the context of strategizing or preparing strategic directions for our work. Our current strategic plan runs until the end of 2025, so we only have one last year left, and we are already in the middle of preparing our next strategic plan for 2026-2029. And this is a very exciting exercise, precisely because we need to have a fresh look at how we have been doing so far, what are the current challenges, and unfortunately we see that the global challenges are actually on the rise rather than on decline. So of course we have to adjust, adapt. So we are already working on that next strategic plan, which will define our work for the next period. And we are going to put the issue of housing, affordable housing, together with access to land and basic urban services back to the center of our attention. And yes, everything else, the areas of impact and the drivers of change will be really built around that. So we are heading in that direction, and we hope that it will help us be better equipped for the policies that are needed for today and for the future, but also to assist our member states, including the ones in sub-Saharan Africa, in a really very practical and well-targeted way. And I am proud to say that we have been doing that very successfly already, especially, of course, in Africa, but also in other parts of the world, and certainly intending to further scale up.
Yes, indeed, quite interesting. Well, doing quite much, but there is also one point actually that you mentioned earlier that I wish us to go back maybe and talk about it, and that is now the UN Habitat and involving the youth. The UN Habitat and of course the youth, generally how it is empowering the youth, and we understand that the UN Habitat has been empowering the youth as participants in governance and of course the decision-making processes related to urban development and of course SDGs. Maybe you could share examples to people who do not really understand what UN Habitat is doing specifically in empowering the youths, and maybe are there opportunities that, and who even should join these opportunities, what kind of youths maybe?
Exactly, and how we are achieving that necessary impact in this practical work. I am proud to call myself a youth champion. I have personally worked on youth-related issues already for many years, including in my previous professional career when I served as Balozi wa Slovakia, APA, the United Nations in New York, and where we have really been putting the youth agenda at the center through the Youth 2030 UN strategy, through really prioritizing also the creation of a new office for youth affairs and many other things. And I have seen repeatedly the transformational power of empowering the youth. And of course that very much includes our women and girls, young women and girls that need to really be given the opportunities to not only participate but to fully engage and to be at the decision-making tables. And of course I have seen that it is important not only to invite young people to come to events and to discuss, but it is often even more important to do the listening part, to really give them the opportunity to tell us things that we need to take on board, and that has been something that we have tried to prioritize. I can say that I am particularly proud of the work that we have been doing with our youth here in Kenya in the Mathare slum. We have supported the youth in the Mathare slum for a good number of years. For example, by helping them to create a public space, a garden in the middle of the Mathare slum where they are able to meet, where they are able to do their community activities, where they are able to consult and to transform their community, even though it's a slum area. Adjacent to it, there is also a playground for young children. We have also supported their work whereby they created a child care center, which is crucial especially for single mothers, young single mothers who without the child care center would not be able to basically have any income. This way they are able to go and put the child at least for a couple of hours in a safe space, and of course then be able to earn the living. But very importantly also that child care center has created room for disabled children, and often we have seen that these things have been a taboo, which is very unfortunate because it then causes traumas and additional mental health challenges for the single mothers in particular, but for the parents and the communities in general. So, I mean, this is just a quick example. Of course, I would be able to elaborate a lot more on this particular project that we have supported. But all in all, it starts with our Youth Advisory Board. As UN Habitat, we have a 17-member Youth Advisory Board that is representative in terms of regional, global representation and also gender structure. We also have a child representative. We have a disabled person to indeed be inclusive and to have on board important advice and recommendations coming from young people that have real life experience and that on a daily basis, of course, are going through these practical challenges, or that they can bring to us directly from the field those important voices. I earlier mentioned our recent World Urban Forum in Cairo, where most of the youth advisory board members were also participating, so we actually also organized a children and youth roundtable, which was extremely useful. But then in practical terms, we are also doing a lot of educational support programs. We have youth-led environmental rehabilitation. We have Youth 2030 Cities. We have a very important initiative called Young Change Makers, Young Game Changers, but it's the same basically. Change Makers, Game Changers is the same idea where we are trying to really empower the young people to bring the necessary change. Sometimes I call them the ambassadors of change that our young people need to be seen as. And I know personally that you yourself have been one of those really advocating for direct participation and engagement of young people, and not taking things for granted, being actively involved in things on the community level or the national level, or obviously also on the regional and global level. So this is quite a few things that we've been doing. Of course, there is always room for doing more. But especially in Kenya, I know that young people are very active. They don't take no for an answer, because I have been engaging with many of them directly, and I know how persistent they are or how focused they are, which is great. That's exactly what it should be. We often engage with young people from universities. We not only talk to them, but also invite them to join us in some of these important initiatives.
Indeed. It's a great. It's actually a great to hear what the UN Habitat is actually doing to the youth, which is actually a very consequential group, because I believe it's around 75% of the population of Kenya is actually the youth, and I believe that spreads across to the larger sub-Saharan areas, countries. I mean. But you've mentioned something that is quite intriguing and quite much interesting of what the UN Habitat is doing for the youth, and even specifically for those people who are underprivileged, who are not quite much privileged. It could be from the slums or so. But of course, we understand, given the significant investment gap, specifically in developing countries, maybe even within sub-Saharan sub-Saharan African countries, maybe the strategies that the UN Habitat is using to even mobilize resources to achieve the SDGs, and particularly those that actually are youth-focused projects, like the one we talked about, which is slum upgrading, which you mentioned, you alluded to, in Kenya. And of course, you talked about Madari as an example. Yes, so maybe you can just elucidate about it. How do you then get the resources? Do you have, is there a strategy of getting the resources? Yeah.
Partnerships. That would be probably the most pertinent answer. And strategic partnerships have very much been also at the heart of my own mandate within UN Habitat. We have spared no effort in building and developing the partnerships that we have, and it's also an invitation maybe to your viewers or those who can join us as partners in leveraging the important work that we are promoting, for example, with the youth or with slum dwellers and many others, whether they are from various organizations or they are from the private sector. There is always great room for those. So I would use the platform a little bit to somehow inspire those who maybe could do some good work with us to team up with us to join us. But indeed, the answer lies in leveraging the partnerships. As we see, national governments simply cannot have enough in their national budgets for prioritizing all these developments, especially in the urban context, because there is a great need for upgrading the urban infrastructure, for investing into transport solutions, into housing, into climate solutions, but also into education, water, sanitation, energy, you name it. And for us to be successful, there is no other way but to really diversify the sources of funding, of course, starting with the national governments and then local and regional governments as well, and then ensuring that the support from the outside that is coming is really well focused and extremely well targeted and prioritized. Well, the pie of the funding available is not getting any bigger, I'm afraid. On the contrary, of course, there is a growing number of sometimes even competing priorities. So, of course, we need to plan extremely well. But again, the answer is in bringing on board also the international financial institutions, multilateral development banks, who previously were not necessarily so much involved in these specific areas that I'm talking about, but where we are currently seeing a lot of shifts and an increased level of interest for them to team up with the different levels of government. And of course, somehow with also with the support from UN Habitat and other similar organizations, and you know, design funding solutions that will be more easily accessible also to our cities, directly to our cities. And this is one of the most exciting pieces that we are currently prioritizing. Just last week, during the World Urban Forum, our executive director, Madame Anna Claudia Rosbach, herself facilitated an important dialogue with representatives of multilateral development banks and international financial institutions to really better understand how we can team up and how we can design solutions that will work for our cities. And of course, this is an ongoing conversation, but very importantly also the private sector, because oftentimes additional money could be coming from the private sector. But of course, previously we were not necessarily always understanding each other. I'm afraid, and I am again talking also from my previous professional experience, especially from New York, we were operating in a little bit different universes, and I think now we have realized that for us to be able to better involve the private sector, we need to understand that they have a different modus operandi. That, of course, when they are joining some projects or some important initiatives, they want to see long-term benefits. They want to see also what it is in it for them, and you know what kind of profit it can potentially bring them, if not immediately than in the medium term or the long term. And of course, also find in the work that we do important opportunities for investments. So, and I think that's the trickiest bit that we have struggled a bit with previously, but which I think we are now really trying to unwrap, creating the additional investment opportunities, then which then accelerate let's say the important infrastructure development.
Quite interesting. Well, still on the youth-led projects actually that is actually funded by the UN Habitat, and you mentioned that one of the ways, and majorly the way through which you get the finance, you mobilize those the finance, is through partnership, and you've mentioned partnership. But of course, there is also a challenge actually that happens in countries like Kenya, and this is the major challenge is to ensure that when this money has already been mobilized, how does it even reach the people, the communities that it is actually even meant for? Does it reach the local, the people actually that most need it? I don't know whether there are initiatives around it to ensure that, of course, it reaches the people, so that after it has been mobilized, the resources have been mobilized by the UN Habitat, then it doesn't reach, or doesn't just, it has to reach then where it is most needed.
I hear you, yes. Of course, accountability, rule of law, good governance is an important piece. And yes, often there are very tangible opportunities and there are tangible solutions available. And yet we have not been able to sufficiently take advantage of them and ensure that the results are really felt on that local level, that somehow things don't get lost in translation, and maybe that's a diplomatic expression that I'm using, or being more blunt, that the money that is flowing in a certain direction doesn't get stuck where it shouldn't, or doesn't get eaten by those who are trying to parasite on the work that we do. And as we know, unfortunately, it does happen. And then recently, I had a very interesting conversation with one of the Kenyan MPs who was very pleased with some of the work that we do, especially in some of the disadvantaged communities, including in some of the more remote counties of Kenya. And I'm always proud to say that in my previous professional career here in Kenya as Balozi, I visited all the Kenya counties, and I dare to say that I have a fairly good picture, I used to have a fairly good picture about the level of development and the various challenges that the different counties have been facing. So to make the long story short, indeed we need to be working as much as possible on the local level, as I mentioned earlier, and involve also the local civil society actors, the community-based organizations, not bypassing anybody, but ensuring that in as far as all the various actors of government are filled in and are briefed and are somehow involved, but without necessarily having an opportunity to divert the funds or to cut them down into too many unnecessary pieces, so that indeed it is the wananchi that benefits. No, and we have some real practical examples. Again, brings me back to the the Madare work that we do. But also we are super proud of a project which is called Go Blue, which involves the 5 coastal counties of Kenya plus Taita Taveta, which is really closely connected to the coastal counties, where we are implementing a lot of good projects focused on waste management, public space, capacity building, job creation, especially for the young people, training them in some crucial areas. And those interventions really are at the very local level, with the very local communities and the very local actors. Yes. And I think that's the way forward. But again, I emphasize that information sharing and coordination with all levels of government is crucial, because somehow escalating or eliminating things would not be helpful.
Okay.
Our practical experience shows that in many ways.
Quite interesting insights. Well, as we end the show, as we come to the end of the show, perhaps you could tell us what the future portends for the people of maybe the sub-Saharan Africa, particularly on SDG 11. And maybe if you talk about the SDGs also in general, because you understand what the SDGs may mean, and where would we wish to, we want to achieve them by 2030. Are we halfway? Where are we headed to? What does the future portend when you generally speak about the SDG, even as you narrow to SDG 11, which now talks about urban, which now is at the heart of what you do. You talk about now maybe the urban resilience and sustainability. Where are we to that extent, even as you come to the end of the show?
Yes, I am very grateful to you for choosing the topic of urban resilience and sustainability, because it is very much at the heart of also designing a good, inclusive, sustainable, and credible future for this beautiful continent, for Africa as the continent of today and tomorrow. And I dare to say that SDG 11 is the most cross-cutting of all the SDGs, because what we try to achieve on the level of our communities and cities really cuts across all these other areas, whether it's health, education, sanitation, water, and so on and so on. All of it crucially, of course, needs to be developed and delivered on the level of our cities and communities, precisely because we know that our future is urban, and it's not a choice that we are making. It's a reality that we need to face. And of course, nobody is saying that our rural areas should be forgotten or abandoned or anything like that. On the contrary, we often are also talking about urbanization of the rural areas, which doesn't mean anything forceful and anything artificial, but it means that even in the rural areas we should be creating the basic civic services, if you will, or the basic municipal services for the people to have a good quality of life. And if we can ensure that, even in the rural areas, then people will be more likely or more motivated to stay in the rural areas where we need them, because they are the ones who are feeding us, who are growing the crops and having the livestock and all that. So we, of course, are very much looking into the urban future, which needs to be, of course, well planned and well designed. And again, that's why these things are at the core of the work that we do. But at the same time, not leaving anyone and any place, as we say at UN Habitat, behind. So, of course, certainly also not leaving behind the people living in the rural areas and you know, those who are marginalized or underprivileged. So it's a fairly complex picture, and yet it's simple because we have the tools, we have the knowledge, we have the capacity. We just need to join forces and stay the course. Sure. And as I often say, the future starts today. So of course what we do today will define, let's say, the quality of life of our young people tomorrow. And it's a very positive and very interesting agenda and trajectory that we are doing.
Thank you so much. Thank
Asante
you so much.
sana.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mikal. That was indeed a very great conversation having you.
Asante.
And of course, it's always a privilege having you on our studios at GBS TV Africa. We are honored. And of course, it was a great conversation when you got to elaborate much on actually what the UN Habitat does to see the resilience and of course the sustainability in these cities. And of course, we'd like to invite you maybe some other time to talk about more of these things, as the SDGs. There's a lot much conversations actually that we would wish to delve into. And of course, we've even talked about what the UN Habitat is now doing to even the youth to better their lives. Of course, we talked about on matters governance and so much and so on. And of course, you guys are doing a great work at the UN Habitat. Thank you so much for your time once again. And of course, you are viewer every Friday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. You know that we meet here on the Insight as you get to delve deeply into critical issues that matter to you. And of course, this was such a day. And on behalf of everyone who has made this a success, we wish you a very good night. My name is Eugene Kwach, and this is GBS TV.